let's fast forward, like start the MMA career. So you went back and was your first fight out of CKB for your MMA career?
Nah, no. My first MMA fight was out of that gym, Lion Muay Thai in Rawai.
Right.
Yeah, they told me I was fighting in Burma. Just kickbox Muay Thai with MMA gloves. And I was like, oh yeah, man. And the guy just lied to us. And then when we got up there, it was like a cage. And I was like, oh, buzzy. And then we like fought at like lunchtime, and it was just MMA. When we got there, they're like, so MMA fighters like come over here for the meeting, and then like everyone went over, and I was like stood there like, huh? And then I just realized that we were fighting MMA, and I was like, oh shit. So I fought this like Malaysian guy who had a couple of MMA fights, but I actually ended up on the ground, bro. We actually ended up on the ground and had him in like north south, and I think I was going for an armbar or something, and I like fell off, and then we stood up, and I managed to catch him, bro. He was like drifting around the edge of the cage towards my right hand, and I just timed the right hand, bro, and put him out for quite a while. And yeah, that was my first MMA fight. It was in Burma.
So that's first one. Let's fast forward. Let's go. Boom. You've gone back to Auckland.
Yeah.
We're always going to go back to the city. We're always going to go back to CKB and go with Eugene, or like, what? How did that all come to be?
I went home for Christmas. So I had a couple of MMA fights out of Tiger still. And I went home for Christmas, and I took a fight like maybe like January 10, something like that. So he was like, oh, I was fighting through the same manager, sort of, this Chinese guy's Israel. And so Eugene, I was like sort of handling my fights over there as well. And he was like, well, you're fighting, like get up to Auckland and train. And I was like, all right. So I came up, and then it turns out I was fighting a dude that was real good. And like Eugene was just real quietly, secretly worried because I was fighting like welterweight. And this big ass dude, Kenang Song, he's in the UFC. Yeah. I was fighting him, bro. I had no idea. I just took the fight. I was like, yeah, whatever, I'll fight. And then Izzy had fought him, and Eugene was worried, because I was all right at wrestling back then, but not that good. And so I trained a little bit, bro. I think I missed a couple of sessions back then because it was like New Year's and Christmas and stuff. And then I went over there, and I had a kind of a hard fight with him, but he cuts a lot of weight, bro. He's a big guy, and I punched him in the body, hit him with a liver rip, and it stopped him. And then after that was when I headed back home. I went back to Thailand after that fight for a while, and then I came home one time too long, and I went back to Thailand, and they were like, nah, you leave too much, can't have your job back. And I was like, fair enough. I was always leaving that. At that time I was like shooting back and forwards all the time. Like my mates would cover classes and stuff like that. And so they were like, nah, we need someone more like reliable that's here all the time. And I was like, yeah, cool. Fair enough. So that's when I just kind of stayed for a little bit and then moved home.
Yeah. And then those fights that you're having, are they amateur or were you going straight into pro? You would have went straight into pro with.
Nah, I didn't have amateur MMA, I just had pro. Yeah.
So let's go, like, so you started fighting out of CKB, you're going under Eugene, and how many fights did you have before you got the UFC contract under Eugene?
4.
Yeah.
Maybe 4, 3. Yeah, I fought, was he? Yeah, maybe 4. Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. So you went through all of that, and it kind of just led to the city kickboxing. I guess, like, next question is, I guess everyone, this is a few people have asked me about this, and you'd probably be the best person to answer it, is like, you've known Huge for so long, right? You've been around the scene, you've been on the combat scene for years and years and years. I guess city kickboxing right now is this like huge, gargantuan mammoth of a beast, especially within the MMA world. But I guess, like most places, it probably wasn't always like that. Like, how did you see it, like, kind of develop and evolve from your time with it when you were just kind of doing a bit of training here and there with Huge to kind of how you've got to the gym where it is now?
Well, I didn't really notice, man, for ages until Israel was in the UFC and stuff. Like Israel kind of blew it up and put eyes on the gym. I think Izzy put eyes on everybody because of just the way he is. I mean, you've spent some time around him, like very charismatic, obviously a monster in the cage, just this like very attractive persona to watch, right? In every way. And then it brought eyes to the gym, and then they were like, oh shit, there's some really good fighters here. And Dan had started fighting out of there. Kai had started. Shane got in the UFC. And then they started looking at all the other fighters that were hanging around there, and they're like, damn, there's a lot of talent at that gym. So I think that's how it sort of snowballed. And then Huge got Coach of the Year, Izzy got Fighter of the Year, and it just started escalating like that, man. Yeah. But it was a very, very short period of time that it blew up and got that attention. Like it was like a year. All happened in a year.
Because I suppose out of the guys, you would have been like there's 5 UFC fighters out of City at the moment, and you're the most recent one to get the contract. What was it kind of like as the guys were getting signed? Like obviously Dan was signed, and then Shane, Kai, and Israel all getting their contracts. What was that like going through that process as I guess these guys are getting recognized and kind of CKB was getting put on the world stage when okay, here's a contract. Okay, Kai's finally made it. Shane's finally made it. What was that like? Like, especially for you, what was that like seeing that happening?
It was cool, man. Like it was very motivating, like for me to get in there, and yeah, it was like also frustrating because I wanted to be in there very badly, but I knew I had to be patient because otherwise I'd watched a lot of UFC fighters sort of rush their way in there and like sort of ruin it all. You know what I mean? Like sort of like the Edward Shavazian recently, you know what I mean? Or this like Sage Northcutt and stuff like that. They were blown up, and then like it just gets all crushed. And so yeah, it was motivating, it was frustrating, but it was worth all of that, right? I just had to be patient.
Did you have a plan? Because I know Israel always talks about how the UFC were kind of chasing him for like 2 years, and they were saying it, and then him and Eugene were always, "Now, patience. We'll do that when it's right." Was there something like that for you? Or like you personally? Did you have like a mindset, or what happened there?
Nah, my mindset was a little bit different back then. It's grown a lot now, especially in the way I'd advise other people. But back then, bro, I was like head down running. Like I wanted to get in there and just fight these dudes. And if I'd got in there when I wanted, no, I definitely wouldn't have done as well as I have. I would have definitely had a few hurdles, maybe a loss or two, maybe not. But yeah, I didn't have a plan, but Eugene had a plan.
What type of
He didn't really divulge what that was to me, but it pretty much involved patience and getting a hell of a lot better at wrestling because obviously the 155 division is like there's a lot of monsters in there.
Yeah, and that's something I guess like probably one of the biggest things I've got from hanging out with you guys is, and especially from Eugene, is that level of trust that you guys have in him, eh? Like it's crazy, and like you guys do have that crazy relationship where it's almost like you just trust Eugene and Eugene knows best. Like what's that been like for you? Like what's your relationship with him?
There's some other guys that he sort of liaises with, and he checks his stuff as well, and we trust what they say because they just have so much more experience than us, man. And like I mean, when we're like cutting about the city or doing like everyday stuff, those guys are usually like watching our opponents or planning like our camps or all that other 1% stuff that is like super important that we wouldn't be doing. So we have to trust what they say is the best. And like they prove they've proven like time and time again that their decisions are like better than ours most of the time.
What's that look like then? Like, I guess first one, like, who are the coaches? Like, walk us through, and then what's that look like? Because I don't know, I coming up playing rugby, and you go all these. I've worked with a bunch of other sports. You usually see like when the game plan, everyone's watching film, the teams in there, everyone's making notes. Like
Yeah.
you just said, that's kind of your coaches. Your coaches are doing that, and then they're taking you through that during your training sessions. Can you run
Yeah.
us through like who are the coaches that are doing that, and then what's it look like when you're training, when you get into a fight camp, and then you're implementing everything that they've watched, they've seen, and they want you to do in the fight?
Yeah. So I guess every fight is a little bit different. Like, um, for instance, like if you take me in Israel, for example, the way we're trained, our pad sessions are quite a lot different. Um, Israel, Eugene explains everything to him like to a T, right? He's very like audible based. Like you can tell him the way they move or something like that, and then Eugene will teach him it. And it's like quite a lighter pad session. It's very based on movement and like strategy and stuff like that because he's so good at that. And then for me, he'll explain a little bit to me, and I like to smack the shit out of the pads, right? Which, to be honest, I think I need to change. I think I need to change and mix in them more of the way Israel does the pads. But that's what I've learned from this last fight. But I'll get to that. But yeah, he lets me like hit the crap out of them because he knows I like that, and then he explains a little bit as we're doing it. But a lot of it, I recognize as we're hitting the pads what he's teaching me. He's sort of teaching me through motion and like repetition. And I work it out as I'm hitting them. And I can tell by like his body language if I'm getting it right, if I'm getting it wrong, his facials, or how many repetitions will make me do of like a certain movement. I can tell that that's part of the game plan. And yeah, man. So that's he trains everybody different, right? Some people, that's what I've learned from teaching people is some people can be taught just by telling. Some people can be taught by telling and showing. Some people you can't do either. You just have to make them do hundreds of repetitions of a certain sequence or combination or pattern, and they don't even know they're learning it. They just learn it subconsciously through muscle memory, and then they'll do it in the fight. But yeah, the other coaches, man, is like, I mean, you've met them all, like Mike, Twister, Huge, Doug. You know, they all have different attributes that make the team what it is, and they all have different areas that they're experts in. And to be honest, Twist is a crazy brain behind all of our game plans. You know, that guy's like a mastermind at watching fights and breaking them down. And I always see Eugene like speaking with him and going over game plans and stuff like that. And I watched him like shadowbox a little bit of stuff together. And he's a huge part in it. And he's got a crazy eye during the fight. That's what's the most impressive thing. He can recognize things during the fight very quickly. And he always sits at the back of the group in the corner. But I think he just sometimes yells it out or sometimes says it to Eugene. And yeah, man, crazy input. That guy's he's worth his weight in gold.
Are you doing that like with like say the other aspects of the game, like Andre with your wrestling? Are you guys doing like one-on-one where Andre is putting together, say,
Yeah.
like a wrestling game plan? Is it the same type of thing that you're talking about with Huge, where it's like you just running the sequences, or he's telling you this, or how's
Yeah,
that work?
Andre's like a bit of both. So he'll explain stuff, and then he's like a big fan of drilling it. You know, right? Wrestlers like drilling, right? They believe in doing a lot of repetitions. So that's how he gets us to learn things. But he always explains what he's teaching us, and explains he's like a defensive master now of wrestling for MMA, because me and Israel and everybody else at our gym pretty much want to stay standing. So he's just got like a vault of different ways to get off the wall, get off the ground, sprawl, like avoid takedowns. And he's actually a really good striker too, Andre. So, and he's had fights and won them. So he can relate to what works and what doesn't work, which some coaches don't really have the ability to do. And he can also put it all together, which some coaches don't do. Some coaches go to their jiu-jitsu, they go to their striking, they go to their wrestling. That's all split up sessions, right? But the good thing about our gym is it's all in one. Nothing's really divided up, you know.
Talk us through that, I guess, without getting into the specifics and going into like giving away all the secrets. I work with heaps of gyms, and I guess I always say to everyone is that the most elite level gym is the one that has the most elite level training schedule in my opinion, and that's you guys. Can you talk us through like what is a weekly when you're in camp? Let's talk about when you're in camp. Like what's a general week of training look like for you
Generally underfed, not enough food.
guys? Don't be so heavy then.
Nah, the week's pretty heavy. A lot of high sessions, a lot of low technical sessions. All our training is periodized, without giving too much away. It's very structured by a guy called Adam. Adam's like our little scientist guru, bro. He's a jiu-jitsu coach, and he designs our whole training schedule. The sessions and where they go and when to do them and how hard to do them and stuff like that. And then obviously we have all those other coaches doing the skill work and breaking down techniques for us. And yeah, man, it's fuck, a lot goes into it. Thinking about it right now, a lot goes into it. We just turn up. Oh, we got to do all the recovery stuff and manage our bodies and stuff like that. But everything training based is just handed to us on a platter, and it's like how much we put in is what we'll get out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's a good point. Let's dive into that because it is intense. Like anyone that's seen you guys are always super fit when you're coming in, but it's a full on 8 weeks when you guys do your camp, and that's something I've noticed with you, and you've probably definitely been very very mindful is the recovery and everything else that you've got to do. What brought
Yeah.
on that mindset shift? Why is this such a big part of your game now? Why is it so important?
Oh, because I felt about 50 at 27, 26. So, nah, I wasn't really that big on recovery, to be honest, ever. Just lack of knowledge about it. I met my now partner, and she stretched a lot and did a lot of rolling, and she's pretty intelligent, man. Like, not pretty intelligent, she's super intelligent, and she was always like stressing me how much I should stretch and recover and stuff like that. So I used to take a bit of it on board and do it, but I definitely started stretching more once I met her. And then I started getting into hot and colds and trigger point and foam rolling. I learned a bit about that, and I learned that through a course that I did. And I learned a lot about recovery when I did a course from a guy online to learn about our training system more. So we have this training system that we're just, like I said, would turn up to and just put the work in. And I didn't really understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. Like, some of the sessions confused me. Like, some of the working times and the rest times were really long and the working times were really short. And I was like, used to just going hard for long periods of time. And I was lost. So I needed to know what I was doing. So I went and did the course. And during that course, I learned a ton about like the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. So I sort of like got a bit obsessed with that and dived into that. And then that's how I sort of broadened my horizon into recovery. And now I do it all, right? Now I do everything. Like, I balance up my nervous system. I've got this little new aura ring from the UFC for my sleep and my HRV. And I learned how to balance out each nervous system if one was more dominant than the other. I got into hot and colds, when to use those, why to use those, stretching, trigger point. I've just got into breathing recently with that Dave Wood, who you've spoken to. And that has been a huge game changer for sleep. Being able to activate my parasympathetic nervous system. And yeah, man, I just got obsessed with recovery because every time I put a lot of effort into recovery, I could just go harder and harder in training. It was crazy.
You did
I think I
like
got my
notice the
heart rate down.
difference.
Yeah, huge. Like, I got my heart rate went down to like 34 during fight week. I think when I was asleep one night. I don't know. This ring could be full of shit. It could be completely inaccurate. I don't know. But yeah, one day I was sleeping. It was like down to like 34, 35 on average. It's crazy, man.
You
Crazy,
feel a
crazy.
difference when it comes like fight night? Because you've done this, I guess each camp you're always adding more. Like you're always adding more to your arsenal, more tools in the tool belt. Do you feel it like
Yeah,
as the
yeah,
fights have?
yeah. 100%, man. 100%. Feel a million times younger
Yeah,
every day. Like when I wake up, waking up used to be pretty horrid. Like I'd be sore and stiff and pretty rigid. Now I wake up pretty limber, and it's really, really good. And yeah, I sleep well. It's just like quality of life, bro, is much better. You know, like when you're constantly in like that sympathetic fight or flight zone all the time, you get aggravated, you don't sleep well, you wake up unrested, you always feel like you're tired, little things piss you off. And that's probably where I got the name Angry Brad, just because I was always overtrained and under recovered. I wasn't overtrained, I was just under recovered
yeah,
because I do the same training now and I recover and I'm not ever overtrained. Sometimes I might creep towards that recovery debt, but it was just back in the day, it was just my own doing from lack of recovery.
What's what's the times? Like obviously you guys are training 2 sessions a day most days. You're training every day, 7 days a week, right? What's
Yeah.
the where you find the time? Like what's the times look like in this? Like how many sessions are you doing and how many recovery sessions, all this, like what's a
Um,
general like?
well, I always stretch, always trigger point at least. Try to make sure I get really good quality of sleep. We train quite late at night. So being able to do that breath work and activate like the appropriate nervous system was like a huge game changer.
Yeah, yeah.
That was the biggest one. Be able to turn off because sometimes like 'cause we train, maybe we finish sometimes like 8:30, 9 o'clock, and we train again maybe 8 or 9 in the morning. So to get home, turn off, cook, eat, sleep, it can be hard. You're like at midnight, right? You're still buzzing, especially after some of our heavy VO2 sessions, man. Like you're cracking for a couple of hours after, like mentally. And so learning to breathe and turn that off was a massive game changer. But it's not finding the time, man. It's like finding the discipline to actually go and do it because it's easy to finish training and just go home, right? Or go eat or go, I don't know. These Aucklanders seem to love going for lattes with their mates. But, it's easy to do something else after training than recover. It's very easy. But it's not very easy to do recovery, right? If someone's like, stay at the gym, roll out and stretch for an hour, you're like, well, I want to go sit at the beach or, you know what I mean, do something else. So it's not finding the time, it's finding the discipline.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good point. How do you feel? Like, have you feel like you've taken this more seriously since you've been signed with the UFC? 3 fights, and we're saying like we'll get into it
Yeah,
in a little bit, like barn burner fights where it's not like you can just rock up and you kind of just like throw some like body shots and get the points and walk out with your hand raised. Like
yeah,
these are
yeah.
pretty fucked up fights you've been in. Have you found that you need to do this? Like you just need to do this to get through
Yeah,
those type of fights?
100%, bro. I got to do this to get like some sort of edge over these guys because at my level and I have to compete with, like if you just look from, I don't even know where I'm ranked, not very highly, but probably from me upwards, even below me is like just beasts, right? Every one of them trains hard. That's the one thing that we all do is we all train hard. And so what do you do other than skill? What can you do to get ahead of these people? So because whoever I step in there against is damn sure they're training just as hard as me. So this is why I spend so much time on this recovery so I can try and train harder than them or put more time in to skill work and stuff like that. Can't really afford to miss sessions because you're overtrained.
Yeah, yeah.
And we have no excuse. You've got no excuse to miss a session being overtrained if your full-time job is a fighter.
Yeah, I remember. I think we were in Vegas for Volk's fight. I think last year or something. I think you said it to me. What'd you say? It was like there's so much to learn. There's so much to learn in mixed martial arts that you can't really afford taking 3-4 months off in between fights. Like you need to be in a state
No
where you're
way.
healthy and you can be doing it. Is that kind of your mindset now from
Yeah.
the rest of your career?
100%. 100%. It's my mindset's been like that since day one. That's why I just fought all the time, because I knew that there's a cap on the sport, right? There's a use by date, and it'll creep up quicker than you think. You know, you feel like it wasn't that long ago that I was like, I felt like people were like, you're still young, you've got heaps of time. But I just turned 29. So you're not that young anymore. Especially like in modern day MMA, you know, there's guys in the UFC that are like 21, 22.
Yeah,
They're good.
yeah.
They come from these countries where they don't need to like go to school and shit. They just fight. They get financed by the government or something like that, and they just can pour time into fighting. So yeah, man, you've got to be very diligent with your time every day fighting. So yeah, man, you've got to be very diligent with your time every day. You can't just throw days away.